From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, gang. How's it going? And welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. It's great to be with all of y'all this morning. I hope everyone's enjoying Hump Day and Wednesday at RSA. I've heard from a lot of people I've been speaking with and messaging back and forth with. Y'all are having a great time, and I'm glad to hear that. So, well, you know, it's 6 a.m. in RSA. Everyone partied late. So my assumption is y'all aren't watching live. You're going to watch after the fact, listen after the fact. So hope you're enjoying your time in San Francisco. We've got a lot to talk about on today, including kind of the tease coming from the UK about exposing the mastermind behind LockBit. We'll get into all of that, a bunch of vulnerabilities, a bunch of new security breaches being reported, as well as some more news around Russia and China that ought to be meaningful for all these practitioners. Thank you again for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on Substack, jamesazar.substack.com. All of the writing, exclusive, in-depth look into a lot of this stuff, including the TikTok ban. And now TikTok's actually filed a lawsuit against Congress and essentially President Biden saying your ban's illegal. They're right, by the way. So don't buy into the hype that they're actually doing something about TikTok. They're not. They wanted to do something about TikTok. There's better stuff to do, but all of that is available on Substack, so go check it out there. Now, without further ado, make sure you're following us on your favorite social media platforms and podcast listening platforms. And now, with all the promotions out the way, let's do a coffee cup cheers, my double espresso, and let's get the show going. Love it. All right, let's go ahead and start with finally the man allegedly behind the LockBit Ransomware Group is a Russian national, surprised there if you are, by the name of Dmitry Yurovich Koroshev of Voronezh, Russia. He's now been charged by the U.S. Department of Justice in a 26-count indictment for creating and operating the LockBit Group. According to the indictment, he was involved in designing LockBit, recruited affiliates to deploy the malware against victims, maintained the infrastructure and leak site, and received over $100 million in proceeds as a share of the ransom payments made by many LockBit victims. LockBit started in September of 2019. It was disrupted by law enforcement in February of 24. So they literally went around for almost 4.5 years, wreaking havoc. Some of the administrators have been able to restore some of the LockBit infrastructure, obviously, but nonetheless, LockBit was used in attacks against 2,500 victims in more than 120 countries, including 1,800 victims in the United States. In addition to encrypting it, the LockBit Group exfiltrated data from targeted organization, used it to pressure victims, threatening to leak it. And here's the handsome fella. Look at this guy. He's posing, y'all. He is posing. Now, I want to know where the Brits got these pictures of Dmitry from. Dimitri's taking a selfie, one AirPod shaped differently in his ear. If you're listening to the fact, you're not watching. Oh, he's got a pose with his folded hands going like in a black polo t-shirt going like, "Da хорошо. I am the man behind LockBit. You will all bow to my ransomware greatness." I saw this picture. I couldn't help but laugh. He's also been sanctioned by the UK and Australia, as well as the US. Those don't mean anything. There's no real extradition treaty between Russia and the US. He's obviously somehow related and under the protection of some bodies in Russia. And so, you know, he's not leaving Russia. That's the prison. That's really the price of these sanctions. He's not leaving Russia because he knows if he leaves Russia to go anywhere, there's an Interpol red notice for him and he's going to get arrested. But, you know, keep taking selfies, Dmitry. Keep putting it out there, man. We love it. I love it. It's great. It's phenomenal. Thank you. Thank you for those pictures. The Brits, NSC, you guys did well there. Google this week announced a fresh batch of security updates for Android to address a total of 26 vulnerabilities, including a critical severity flaw in the system component. The bug CVE 2024-23706 impacts Android 14, could allow attackers to escalate their privilege unvulnerable devices, according to Google. The most severe of these issues is a critical security vulnerability in the system component that could lead to local escalation of privilege with no additional execution privileges needed. The vulnerability was resolved as part of the May 1st security patch level, which addresses 8 flaws, including 4 elevation of privilege bugs in the framework component, 3 EOP issues, and 1 information disclosure defect in system components. The other 18 vulnerabilities that were patched on the 5th of May, Cinco de Mayo. So Pixel devices running a security level of May 5th contain patches against all of these flaws. So you want to make sure you get those updated in your environment. The FBI talking yesterday at RSA, and a lot of news coming from RSA, especially thanks to the Record, who've done an impeccable job of documenting some of the more important conversations that are being had there. Scattered cyber presents a unique challenge for cyber cops, according to the FBI. The FBI claims they must evolve if it hopes to successfully throw out a group of hackers who have wreaked havoc on some of the largest companies in the U.S. They're urging the public to be patient as law enforcement fights the criminal networks. Here's the thing. We're, as practitioners, we're between a rock and a hard place. Look, I work as a CISO. I do a lot with the FBI and have a lot of great friends that are FBI cyber agents, and they're great. They really care about the work they do. They really care about the victims. And then you've got the companies who, in a lot of cases, don't understand that the fact that they're battling nation state, highly funded, highly sophisticated forces. And then you've got the regulators who regulate reporting but don't regulate standards, therefore essentially creating a gap, and that gap is the standard. And then the person who has to sell that standard is the CISO to the business. And this is where the disconnect in our regulatory framework exists in this country and in all Western Hemisphere as a general rule of thumb in most major democracies. If we look at data breach notification and we had a robust federal data privacy law, we wouldn't need data breach notification. That law would essentially cover saying that within a period of time that you disclose someone's information is being exposed, you ought to report it as part of the data privacy law, ex GDPR, right? That's one of the good things in GDPR. But then comes the standard issue, right? And the standards really exist because when all I got to do, when 60% of the cost of a breach is reporting rather than mitigation, rather than reinforcing, you understand that there's a flaw in the system. And that flaw must be addressed robustly and effectively. And the FBI, for their part, are trying to do the best that they can, but they're also fighting funding like CISOs are. They're also fighting bureaucracy like CISOs are. And they're also fighting all the different bodies that all have a piece of cyber and all want to continue to get a bigger piece of cyber in order to increase their budgets and be able to do more work. And this is where the disconnect in our frameworks exists in these United States. And so when you hear a story like this one where you go, the FBI needs to come back. They need to evolve. We have to innovate as they innovate. This is Brett Leatherman, the Deputy Assistant Director for the FBI Cyber Division, telling Recorded Future during a sit-down interview at RSA. If you look at scattered cyber, it's very consistent that we need private sector victims who've been compromised by scattered cyber to come forward quickly enough to provide us with more information that would help us in the law enforcement operation. That also exists very much. There's a challenge. Companies don't always want to share information with the feds. And so what ends up happening for the FBI is they're really playing catch up. And by the time they get something, these guys have innovated and moved on to something else. So it's a cat and mouse game, and we're not really doing a good job of being able to come together and solve it. So there's that as well. We'll move to a new attack dubbed Tunnel Vision that can route traffic outside of a VPN encryption tunnel that allows attackers to snoop on unencrypted traffic while maintaining the appearance of a secure VPN connection. The method was described in detail by the Leviathan Security, relies on the abuse of dynamic host configuration protocol, that's DHCP option 121, which permits the configuration of classless static routes on a client systems. All the attackers need to do is set up a rogue DHCP servers that alters the routing table so that all VPN traffic is sent straight to the local network or a malicious gateway, never entering the encrypted VPN tunnel. When the traffic hits the gateway, they use the traffic forwarding rule on the DHCP server to pass traffic through a legitimate gateway while they snoop on it. You can see there's a great image here. And again, all of this stuff is in show notes. You can go click the link, see it there, and we'll post those on our LinkedIn page as well as Substack. The issues lies in DHCP lack of authentication mechanism for incoming messages that could manipulate routes, and was assigned the vulnerability identifier CVE 2024-3661. The researchers note that the vulnerability has been available for exploitation by threat actors since at least 2002, but there's no known cases in the wild. However, you can imagine, like I'm reading this, so are threat actors, and they understand this, and they're working on there as well. If you're in the VPN business, you want to make sure you're getting that visibility. Also coming from RSA, more stuff on Vault Typhoon. Eric Goldstein, the executive assistant director for CISA, explaining that the government of China's objective in deploying Vault Typhoon to break into U.S. critical infrastructure caused disruption, saw social panic. China's increased its aggression towards Taiwan. That's part of what they're looking at to slow down U.S. response in the event they choose to invade Taiwan. And look, I don't think China's going to invade Taiwan in the way most people think. I don't think a bunch of Chinese Marines are going to line up on the island and take over forcefully. The Chinese are a patient bunch, and communism is a very patient bunch. And they realize one thing: democracies are messies. And so they count on the fact that if they can sow social discord in Taiwan, they could potentially do what they did in Hong Kong, which is kind of do a political coup of sorts, and then implement their people in there, then enforce their laws without having to even fire a shot, really. And so I think that's the Chinese plan, right? Kind of ride out and then go, hey, you're a democracy, put these people in place. And then that's kind of been the Xi Jinping playbook, if you look at it. So what's Vault Typhoon really doing? The Chinese are great at playing a distraction game, right? Think of it like this: we're going to do all these different things. We're going to attack you in all these different ways. We're going to create all these different vulnerabilities. And then if we ever go into a head-to-head conflict, we'll start hitting you little by little at all these different spots. And you'll have so many wars at so many fronts that you won't be able to handle it, and you will crumble. That's the Chinese way. And if you understand the Chinese way, then you understand that what Vault Typhoon is doing is serious, but they've got other plans as well. And so the focus has got to be at the executive level in our government. What's the China plan? Then at every single agency, how do we disrupt some of these items that China's trying to do globally in order to do that? By the way, we're seeing that in Africa, where U.S. forces are being forced out, and Chinese and Russian troops are being brought in. And that's, again, part of this whole movement around, weakening the West and weakening the U.S. With global diplomacy. The Ministry of Defense in the UK saying a breach occurred at a third-party payroll system holding bank details for as many as 272,000 serving armed forces personnel and recent veterans. In few of the cases, addresses may have also been exposed. Defense Secretary Grant Shapes said officials have immediately taken the system offline. They've launched an investigation into the breach and possible failings by the contractor, SSCL, which describes itself as the largest provider of critical business support services for the government. They can't rule out state involvement. Shapes did not confirm reports by Sky News and the BBC that China was behind this specific cyber attack. For reasons of national security, we can't release further details of suspected cyber activity behind the incident, he said. Labour Party defense spokesperson John Haley asked why the media has clearly been briefed that China was behind the attack if the government wasn't prepared to say so. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, when asked about the reports, said it opposed all forms of cyber attack. I mean, again, propaganda machine. I'm not going to really quote the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's literally one of the Hamas, China, Iran, propaganda voices, and put the Russians in there and the North Koreans, but no one listens to the North Koreans. The University System of Georgia is notifying 800,000 individuals that their personal and financial information was compromised, part of the MOVEit hack last year. The data breach occurred when LockBit Ransomware Group exploited the vulnerability in Progress Software's MOVEit managed file transfer software and stole data to the organization to use it. Mostly 2,000 organizations. To date, over 2,000 organizations have disclosed impact from the MOVEit hack, roughly 900 schools in the U.S. The University System of Georgia runs most universities in the state of Georgia. And so they're now finally notifying people of what's going on. So 26 higher education institutions, including research, comprehensive, and state universities, state colleges, the Georgia Public Library Service, and the Georgia Archives were all part of this. And in closing the show today, Wiz announces a staggering $1 billion raise funding, bringing their total fundraise to date at $1.9 billion. The latest round gives them a valuation of $12 billion. It was led by Anderson Horowitz, Lightspeed Venture Partners, and Thrive Capital. Participating were also Greylock, Wellington Management, and existing investors CyberStarts, Green Oaks, Howard Schultz, Index Ventures, Salesforce Ventures, and Sequoia. They've also reported that they've reached $350 million in annual recurring revenue for last year, ranking in the Forbes Cloud Top 100. So job well done for the folks over at Wiz, and congratulations on this raise. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. with all the latest and greatest, 9 a.m. Eastern, with all the latest and greatest. Please make sure to subscribe, follow us on Substack, share and like, comment below. Let us know what stories you like, where you want us to do a deep dive. I love to kind of get feedback from the audience, and your feedback does go into the show. The show has been shaped by audience feedback, just so y'all know. So till then, have a great rest of your day, and most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.